All right. Hello. So I'm Maddie. I run Osaurus Studios. I am slightly losing my voice, so forgive the inevitable voice cracks that are about to happen. And this talk is about recreating country Australia in our game Call of the Golden Valley, which takes place in the high country of Victoria. So we'll be talking about how our studio specifically approached this, but also I think hopefully it'll have some general world building-ish takeaways for people in the audience, because it turns out recreating a specific environment is just world building, but without the imagination phase. So we'll talk about how we've done that. And as a little intro to who I am, if you couldn't tell from my accent, I am not actually Australian, so it's very brave that you rocked up to this talk to hear about how to recreate your own country by a foreigner. But I did live in the high country of Victoria, which is where the game takes place, for about 6 months, and you'll be seeing a bunch of pictures that I took while up there. And I just really fell in love with the environment and the location. And the game sort of popped up inside my head and wouldn't leave, and now 2 years later, here we are. So that's a little bit about how we got here, and we'll just get into it. So, did I practice how to switch the slides? Here we go. The game. So, my marketer person would kill me if she found out that I had a room full of people and I didn't show the trailer of the game. So, we're gonna see if we can make that happen, but it's not uploading. Okay, she will kill me because we're not gonna show the trailer of the game. I can't be bothered. So the elevator pitch, I like to call it Picnic at Hanging Rock meets Nancy Drew. But basically, you play as an American tourist whose friend's gone missing on a working holiday in the fictional town of Phillipston, Victoria, which if you've ever been up near Mansfield, it's sort of based around that. And your friend has gone missing. You go up there to see what's what from a holiday in Melbourne, and you find out that 4 other people have also gone missing into the bush. The townspeople all have their theories on what's been going on, and it's up to you to sort of untangle the fact from fiction, figure out where your friend's gone, and then go into the bush to find her. So that is the synopsis of the game, and also hopefully now it's obvious why we really need to sell it as being Australian, because the place is really central to this, the game and the story, and I kind of almost view the town and the forest as their own characters in the game. So the plan for today. This will be the only organized thing about this talk. Also, I'll apologize in advance. These slides are going to be real ugly because I'm a programmer by trade. So you've come to an art talk by a programmer. Buckle up, people. So we're going to do some art theory. We'll talk about finding your ears and tails, which I'll explain what that means. Reference gathering, populating your environment, and then I'll leave some time for questions. So cool, let's go. Art theory. What is this? Cat. Good. Not a trick question. What's this? Cat. What's this? Cat. Okay, so these are taken from one of my favorite subreddits, Minimal Cat Art. It is an entire subreddit. But jokes aside, what this is doing is it's distilling the idea of a cat into its most basic forms. If you wanted to be highbrow about it, we could talk about Cubism and Impressionism also, taking the essentials and capturing them. I decided to go with minimal cat art. So why this is important to us as an indie studio is this might be a shock. We don't have oodles of money. And we can't go photo scan entire Australian towns. And also, if you want to put the art lens back on it, even if we could afford to go photo scan an entire Australian town, that's probably not actually what we want to do, because we're not making a simulator game, and also, right, like, we have cameras, we have Google Street View. If people want to do that, they can. And so the purpose of art is to give more like the impression of a small Australian town rather than being an exact recreation. So, yeah, ears and tail. So if we look at like the commonalities of what sold all those things as cats, right? I think it's mostly the pointy ears and the tail. So in programming language, we would say this is necessary and sufficient to prove a cat. I'm going to talk about ears and tails because it's Wednesday morning at GCAP. So, cool. I didn't come for your like academic treatment of the minimal cat art subreddit, Batty. So how does this apply to the art direction and world building of the game? So does anyone recognize either of these locations? Yep, Beechworth, Victoria on the right. That's the slightly easier one to get. Does anyone even want to guess the country for the left?
It's got a US flag.
Yep, okay, there we go. Cool, so these are two small towns in the US and Australia, respectively. It's Beechworth, Victoria on the right, and on the left is Concord, Massachusetts, which is where I was born and raised, and it's in the northeast part of the US. So superficially, these actually kind of look similar, I think, like small town. And the way that I like to find the ears and tails, so to speak, of real life environments is kind of comparing and contrasting. So when I moved to Australia, I sort of had the left side implicitly in my head of this is what a small town looks like, and then when I see the right, I can immediately see what pops out. But if you were going to do this in reverse, if I had grown up in Beechworth and was like, I'm going to make a game about where I grew up and the high country, but I'm not sure what like really sells it, and it's been too close. I grew up in it. I don't know what I'm looking at anymore. It just all is. You can do it in reverse and compare it with like a European small town and be like, okay, why do I know that this is Europe and this is Beechworth? So let's play spot the difference. Ben got that there is indeed an American flag, and honestly, if you want to sell some places America, put American flags everywhere. We freaking love to put our flag on anything and everything, including the moon. Yeah, what else do we notice that like definitely gives one away as,
Pub.
Huh?
There's a pub.
Yeah, there's a pub.
The roof angles on the US one, those pitched roofs.
Yeah, like these are very. Wait, can you see it? Yeah, you see that. Yeah, these are very sort of like colonial era architecture, and because Australia was settled later, it doesn't have that. What else?
Cars on the wrong side.
Yep, the cars. Let me just look. I think people have gotten them except for one.
Trees. The amount of shade.
Oh yeah, trees. That's a good one. Someone said footpath. What do you mean about footpath?
The footpath on that was a lot smaller than what you get in a country town in Australia.
Yeah. Okay, so like, yeah, and also country Australia has these covered awnings that often go quite deep on the sidewalk. What else? Someone said trees. That's a big one. I read a whole article about how they were filming a bunch of movies in Australia during the pandemic that were meant to be set in England. And if you go to country Victoria, like you can kind of imagine it's like the rolling hills of England or Ireland, except for the gum trees. And they were like, we have to take those out in post. So yeah, I think this audience is clearly awake and got all of the differences that I had picked out. So trees, flagged, pitch roofs, the cars are on the different side. One thing that I always notice about Australia is the iron lace details on the heritage buildings. And roofing materials. Lots of metal roofs. Lots of metal roofs here in the US, at least in the Northeast. It's mostly like shingles. And yeah, so this is how I go about thinking about like what are the ears and tails, because there's certain things that are common, right? Like, okay, the pavement maybe we use a different like cement in the US than Australia, but like no one notices. That's like saying like both cats and dogs have fur. Like that's not a useful distinction. And so this is how I go about thinking about like what are the things that we really need to include if we can't include everything to sell this as Australia. I'll do a quick counterexample. I don't know if anyone's ever played the Paynes Creek Killings. It's sort of like a walking sim murder mystery game. Really good, I love it, but I'm gonna shit on it for a minute. They tried to sell this as New Jersey. This is like, I don't know, like English Village asset pack. And I believe the team who made it is based in Japan, so like I'm gonna cut them some slack. But the fact that during this game they keep saying it's like set in the US, this just kept pulling me out of the world, because these are details that I specifically noticed, and I was like, there is not a single town in the country that looks like this, and I will not be convinced otherwise. So, I mean, again, it's not a simulator, but if you're trying to sell your game as being set in a certain place or have a sense of place, anything that goes against it is going to take the player out and break sort of their concentration and immersion with this game that you've so carefully crafted. Because I haven't played this game in a couple years, and what I remember the most is that this is not New Jersey. And that's probably not what the developers wanted me to take away from this game. Cool, so ears and tails for a small Aussie town. Someone already shouted out pub. Let's see. I think this like sort of roundabout style with like usually a war memorial in the center is very Australian. I've just been to enough towns that they all seem to have them. These eccentric homemade mailboxes, I love them. Fire danger, right? That's, I think you really know that you're out in the bush when you see that. The like eccentric bakery that maybe goes a little nuts on the designs. And then finally shopping trolleys. Like, if you have not traveled outside of Australia, I need to drop some knowledge on you. The rest of the world does not just like take their shopping trolleys home with them and then like leave them in ditches or creeks or like the pavement in front of their house. Like, it's the first time I came to Australia, I was just like, I said to my partner, I was like, what is this? Like, why are these here? So this is sort of what, to me, ended up being the ears and tails of a small Australian town. And then what are they for the high country in Victoria? So we're just like zooming in on how do we really sell this as a specific thing. And this again is where you sort of think like, what do we have that other states maybe don't? And so footy is a big one. And then I think it comes down a lot to trees in the natural environment. So these are snow gums, and anyone who's heard me talk about my game knows that I spend a lot of time thinking about trees, and unfortunately there's no snow gum asset pack in Unity, so that's fun. But basically, right, it branches off much lower than other species of gum trees that go straight up and then branch out. And then just sort of like the topology and look of the mountains. This is from the high country. And I think probably someone who spent a lot of time in the Blue Mountains could look at that and be like, yeah, they're blue, but like those aren't the Blue Mountains. I'm looking at something else. Yeah, this is how we do sort of ears and tails. And then, okay, how do we put this in a game? We had a cute video, but it's not going to work because I don't know how to play videos here. But I did anticipate that this could possibly happen, so here's some still photos. We took a field trip. Ben, who's sitting right there, I'm going to embarrass you, sorry, looked up where we could find where snow gums grow as sort of a proxy for, like, is this high country enough, because we weren't going to take a 3-hour each way day trip up to where the game is sort of actually set. And we went to sort of Cathedral Ranges, Marysville. And we took a day of like work time to go do this, and everyone was paid for their time. And this was super important to get everyone on the same page of like, okay, so I have this internalized of this is what a small country town looks like, but you need to share that with your team. And Yi, our lovely artist, is actually from Malaysia. So extra important to take her and show her, like get her in the environment. So that's what we did. It's a really fun day. And these are the results. So this is some of the game art, and we have a shopping trolley, which was great. And what was even better about this was that I had forgotten that I had asked Yi to make a shopping trolley, and then she was just populating the town level, and I didn't go into it for a couple weeks, and I did a git pull and started checking things out, and I like found the shopping trolley in my own game. I was kind of surprised, but I was like, all right, I did, yep, nope. I did ask for this to be put here. So this is that, and then this, I made this into a GIF so it would definitely work, so forgive the graininess. This is sort of a prototype walkthrough of the town we've made, and you can see like we've got the pub, we've got the roundabout layout, we've got the like 45-degree parking, we've got the awnings, we've got the mountains in the background. We're gonna swap out the trees. So this is sort of how it's manifesting at the moment. And you can't see it because the GIF is bad quality, but the pub has like the iron lace balconies on it, which was fun to do in Blender. Okay, so wait, there's more. We've just been talking about buildings and trees and shopping trolleys for the most part. A big part of the environment is who lives in it and how they interact with the environment. And again, because shockingly, we are not sitting on piles of money, we can't make sort of every town's person who might live in this environment. Actually, the town's gonna be pretty empty, and when you ask the bartender, like, where is everyone? He's gonna tell you that everyone's over in the next town over because the town footy team has like made it to the finals and they're all over there. But you still need to sell this town as being pretty lived in, and so you sort of think about this. So who lives in this world? I think this is just hilarious. I was at a mate's like dad's place up in the high country, and we were just like sifting through the newspaper, and this was like a legitimate full-page article. So we haven't recreated the Steves in the game, but this is really an example of, one, it's really good if you're trying to recreate any environment in games to pick up the newspaper, turn on the radio, watch the local television channel, even if it's not stuff that you would normally do, because that gives you a huge insight into sort of what the people in this environment might care about. Or in this case, it might just tell you that like it was a pretty slow news day and that there was nothing else to report. And this is actually from my hometown newspaper, so the other town that we saw, where someone called the police to report that fish were missing from their pond. So talked a lot about finding the ears and tails about what makes your environment unique, but it also turns out that sometimes things are pretty similar around the world, and I think sort of small town antics and gossip and like politics, I was raised in a small town, are pretty much the same. So I'll also say like take the similarities when you can find them and don't be afraid to fold other things in, because if you've got like your ears and tails set up right, you can start bringing in other elements, and then it just makes the world feel really lived in and yeah, like authentic, and you can add some humor. So again, it's not a simulator. We can bring things. So again, like reading town notice boards is something I do a lot, and then I have so many weird pictures on my phone of just random things like this. So you know, you look at what people are caring about. Like, what would a bulletin board in Melbourne say? It would not be talking about illegal deer hunting, right? Like, that gives us a really strong sense of, it would give us a really strong sense of place. And it looks like also, the Uniting Church is advertising the op shop. So that just sort of gives us a feel of where we are, and it can say a lot about who might live in this town and what they care about and, you know, how they spend their days without actually, again, having to spend huge budget and get like 200 NPCs in. So these are some of the posters we're gonna plop around the farm. It turns out Slip Slap Slop is copyright protected by Cancer Council. So we've made our own, but hopefully it looks familiar. And then finally, I always think it's like, there's all these magazines, like every bakery claims it was voted like the best vanilla slice and the best pie. And you're like, how many governing bodies of vanilla slices are there in the world? And so we'll have like the competing bakeries. So again, getting the ears and tails and figuring out like where you can sort of draw the humor. Similarly, on Brick Lane in London, where they have a lot of curry houses, every single restaurant has a banner being like voted best curry by like a slightly different organization name in like maybe some combination of like the 3 most recent years. Cool, but it's the last day of GCAP, and I was hoping that I could just like get a nice list to follow and take a picture of a slide. So here's my ears and tails world building method, trademark. And basically it's spend a lot of time in your target environment if possible. So if you're gonna make a game about Italy, like you should probably go try to spend some time in Italy and just sort of get a feel for like what are people watching, saying, listening to, and what does that reflect back on them. Again, I really like the commercials on local access television, or like that just shows like what's been hyper locally targeted. When I was living in the high country, one of the commercials was like, is your irrigation schedule like ruling your life? And I was like, wow, that's a problem that I had never previously considered. But yes, I suppose if I had a farm, going on holiday would be tricky because someone needs to look after the farm. So like I've learned something about the people who live in that area and what sort of concerns they might have from day to day. Yeah, and how does it feel? So again, I think it's actually easier to do when it's a place that you haven't spent a lot of time in because you're coming in with fresh eyes. So it's been interesting to me as someone who was not born and raised in Australia, coming and recreating Australia. And I think it's actually given me almost this superpower to be able to zoom in on like, that's different, that's different, that's different. That's what's gonna sell it to, you know, overseas audiences as being in Australia. But if you're trying to recreate an environment very familiar, I'd recommend doing the opposite of like taking a picture of like the European counterpart of whatever you're trying to recreate and be like, okay, why do I know that's Europe and why do I know that that's home? Horde references. I actually had completely forgotten about the 2 Steves in the newspaper until I was putting together these slides looking for photos I had taken like by geography location. And take weird pictures. I have so many weird pictures on my phone of like, how does the gutter meet the house in Australian houses? Because this is actually what you need when you're recreating it. Remember that you are not building a simulator. Not everything has to be correct, because I think it's, we all do have limited time, energy, and money. And so getting bogged down in, oh, this is exactly what, you know, Australian cement looks like. No, like let's focus on the trees. That's what people are really gonna do. And also, like, you can take some poetic license. Maybe like a small town wouldn't have all of these things, but it would be cuter if it did. So we just put them all in one. I don't know. And then profit. Indie games is a great way to make money. Yeah, so that's us. This is our team. This is Yi, who's done all the lovely artwork. This is Ben, who does our sound and drives us on field trips. And this is Rhiannon, who will be mad at me that I did not show you the trailer, and does our marketing. So we have 5 minutes for questions, and I'll also hang out. I really like nerding out about this stuff.